Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with another Bible study. Today we are going to be getting back into First Samuel, but today, more than most days, we're going to give my disclaimer. I hold some unconventional beliefs, and therefore I tend to make some people uncomfortable. I am perfectly fine being called a heretic. I am perfectly fine not believing the things that you do. But if you are not seeking more knowledge than you already have, this is probably not the place for you. I look at things through an unconventional lens. I do not see the Israelis as the chosen people, nor do I see a single way to reach salvation. And that bothers some people, and I'm perfectly fine with that. And if that's you, be blessed. Today we're going to be talking about David, and I'm probably going to step on some toes. So if your toes are easily stepped upon, be blessed. This probably isn't the study for you. But if that's at least a little bit intriguing, or if you've been here since Genesis, which I absolutely recommend, let's dig in and see what's going on. We are in 1 Samuel 20 because we left off in 1 Samuel 19. And David, the chosen of God, who is supposed to be the king, is now fleeing from the chosen of God who is the king. And so it's okay to be a little bit confused by that because God apparently just waits a really long time before he does what he wants to do. He just delays. Like, he's like, man, this is not the guy. It turns out that this is not the guy that I thought it was, and I want him removed. So we're going to get rid of Saul. And I'm gonna bug Samuel until he goes and annoys David. But then instead of bringing David to the throne right then, we've got this long protracted process that we are in the middle of. Now, at this point, we have seen the inconsistent story of David being in the field and somebody saying that Saul needs to have somebody to harp for him. And so they bring him, and then he becomes the armor bearer, and then he's going back and forth, and then he is not known when he comes and kills Goliath, and he becomes the armor bearer then, and then there's a whole lot of things in the last one. But today is a new one, so let's begin afresh in 1 Samuel 20. Jonathan, who is the son of Saul, and so he is like blood brothers, right? They're closer than kin. They are companions in arms, and that forms some very tight bonds. And Jonathan doesn't really listen to his dad the way that he should, right? He should be listening to his dad when he says that David's the bad guy, but he doesn't. And so David fled from Naoth in Ramah, and he comes to Jonathan and asks, "What have I done? What is my iniquity? How have I sinned against your father that he wants to take my life?" "Far from it," Jonathan replied. And at this point, like, he doesn't know that David's the anointed one. He doesn't know that this is the successor to the king. Nobody knows that but David and his family and Saul, or Samuel. They're the only ones that know because they're hiding that, God chose this kid way back then. They're hiding that. And so, he doesn't, like, it's not like he's got that against him. And what has happened is David has become more famous. He has achieved the things that Saul's just a little bit scared to do. Saul's kind of a coward. He's tall, but he's more of a gentle giant. He will be provoked, but he would rather not. We've seen that. He would rather not have taken the yoke of leadership at all. He went and hid, and he had to be called out. And so God chose wrong. And now his son is like trying to. David asked his son, "What did I do? What was my offense?" Because now Saul has tried to kill him a couple of times. He's thrown spears at him on two separate occasions. And far from it, Jonathan replies, "You will not die. Indeed, my father does nothing, great or small, without telling me. So why would he hide this matter from me? This cannot be true." But David again vows, "Your father knows very well that I have found favor in your eyes." And he said, "Jonathan must not know of this, or he will be grieved. As surely as the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, there is but a step between me and death." And then Jonathan said to David, "Whatever you desire, I will do for you." So David told him, said, "Look, tomorrow is the new moon, and I'm supposed to dine with the king. Instead, let me go and hide in the field until the third evening from now. And if your father misses me at all, tell him, David urgently requested my permission to hurry to Bethlehem, his hometown, because there is an annual sacrifice for his whole clan. And if he says good, then your servant is safe. But if he is enraged, you will know he has evil intentions. Therefore, deal faithfully with your servant, for you have brought me into a covenant with you before the Lord. If there is an iniquity in me, then kill me yourself. Why should you bring me to your father? Never, Jonathan replied. If I ever found out that my father had evil intentions against you, would I not tell you? And then David asked Jonathan, who will tell me if your father answers you harshly? Come, he replied, let us go out into the field. And so the two of them went out into the field, and Jonathan said, by the Lord, the God of Israel, I will sound out my father by this time tomorrow or the next day. If he is favorable towards you, will I not send for you and tell you? But if my father intends to bring evil on you, then may the Lord punish me, and ever so severely, if I do not tell you and send you on your way to safety. May the Lord be with you, just as he has been with my father. And as long as I live, treat me with the Lord's loving devotion, that I might not die. But do not ever cut off your loving devotion from my household, not even when the Lord cuts off every one of David's enemies from the face of the earth. And so Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, may the Lord hold David's enemies accountable. And Jonathan had to reaffirm his vow out of love for him. For Jonathan loved David as he loved himself. And then Jonathan said to David, tomorrow is the new moon, and you will be missed if your seat is empty. And when you have stayed 3 days, hurry down to the place you hid on the day this trouble began, and remain beside the stone Ezel. And I will shoot 3 arrows to the side of it, as if I were aiming at a target. And then I will send a boy and say, go find the arrows. Now, if I expressly say to him, look, the arrows are on this side of you, bring them, then come. Because surely as the Lord lives, it is safe for you and there is no danger. But if I say to the young man, look, the arrows are beyond you, then you must go, for the Lord has sent you away. And as for the matter you and I have discussed, the Lord is a witness between you and me forever. And so David hid in the field, and when the new moon had come, the king sat down to eat. And he sat in his usual place by the wall, opposite Jonathan and beside Abner. But David's place was empty. And Saul said nothing that day, because he thought, something has happened to David to make him ceremonially unclean. Surely he is unclean. But on the day after the new moon, the second day, David's place was still empty. And Saul asked his son Jonathan, why hasn't the son of Jesse come to the meal, either yesterday or today? And Jonathan answered, David urgently requested my permission to go to Bethlehem, saying, please let me go, because our clan is holding a sacrifice in the city, and my brother has told me to be there. So now, if I have found favor in your eyes, please let me go and see my brothers. And that's why he did not come to the king's table. I haven't stopped for a lot of commentary because there's not a lot to comment on, right? This is David and Jonathan make a pact. If this happens, run. It's that simple. And then Saul's anger burned against Jonathan, and he said to him, you son of a perverse and rebellious woman. Do I not know that you have chosen the son of Jesse to your own shame and to the disgrace of the mother who bore you? That's an interesting phrase. That's a very, very interesting phrase, especially in the light of some of the knowing. And he was a handsome young boy, an armor bearer. He took out his rages on him and he played the harp. And he chose him to the shame. You son of a perverse and rebellious woman. Do I not know that you have chosen the son of Jesse to your own shame and to the disgrace of the mother who bore you? This is not talking about the covenant that they just made. This is not talking about friendship, people. This is talking about a stoning offense. And I'm not going to say it because it will set off a whole bunch of triggers. Now, I've made it quite clear that the offense, the sin, is not the act. People are born that way, and if you don't like that, you're definitely in the wrong Bible study. The sin, the problem of, you know, several cities now has been pushing that thing on someone when they don't want it. It has never been the consensual acceptance of a thing. And so it's not terrible to me to think that maybe this was a thing, and it probably was a thing. Just so it's clear enough, right? Jonathan and David were probably real good friends. I know that's a whole lot of people are mad right now. And it's okay, you can flame me in the comments. I'm just reading the book. And that is the logical assumption to make from that. Now, does it explicitly say that? No, it can't explicitly say that. They couldn't be that inconsistent. I mean, there's plenty of inconsistencies in this book. There's plenty of problems with itself, within its own chapters, and all of those things. But they couldn't be that blatantly obvious. But this ruddy boy who was handsome at a young age, right? That's a weird way to talk about a kid, if you think about it. And why was this kid the one who could just soothe the savage beast for Saul? Saul was a big old boy. But then that kid and his son, they got along pretty good, and they got along really good. The shame and to the disgrace of the mother who bore you. Like, that's not just something you idly throw around, right? David had a seat at the table, right? This isn't some, random person. This isn't some, this is somebody who eats with the king, who is a close familial type situation, right? This is not a steak dinner. This is his spot at the table was empty 2 days in a row. And he's like, where's he at? He's not here for 2 days. Something's wrong. Why was it disgraceful? I want somebody who apologizes to answer me in the question. Why was it disgraceful? Hit me in the comments with that. I want to know. Somebody who apologizes, because that right there in particular, well, that blows a whole lot of holes in a whole lot of things. A whole lot of holes in a whole lot of things. This is the son of Jesse. This is David, the root of all things. You remember where his great-great-great-grandpa came from? Or great-great-great-grandma? We talked about that too. For as long as the son of Jesse lives on this earth, neither you nor your kingship will be established. Now send for him and bring him to me, for he must surely die. Nobody knows he was anointed as king. Nobody knows. It is a secret held by David, his family, and Samuel. That is the entirety of who knows about it. Through all of the slaying of Goliath, they did not proclaim God has anointed him king. And he's walking around as a child with a giant's head that's probably close to the same size he is. They don't proclaim him king then. When he's leading these armies into battle, they don't proclaim it then. This is not, he knew he was anointed. That is not what this is. There is something else that caused shame and disgrace to the mother who bore you. I'm hammering it, I know. I'm sorry. I know that hurt somebody's heart, but it is what it is. Why must he be put to death? Jonathan replied. What has he done? And then Saul hurled his spear at Jonathan to kill him. So Jonathan knew that his father was determined to kill David. And Jonathan got up from the table in fierce anger and did not eat any food that second day of the month, for he was grieved by his father's shameful treatment of David. That sounds like a lover. I'm just saying. And in the morning, Jonathan went out to the field for the appointment with David. And a small boy was with him. And he said to the boy, run and find the arrows I shoot. And as the boy ran, Jonathan shot an arrow beyond him. Excuse me, Mr. Sir. He said, hey, bro, I'm going to shoot some arrows. Go ahead and run down there. And then he shoots them past the kid. That's awesome. That is range safety right there. And when the boy reached the place where Jonathan's arrow had fallen, Jonathan called to him, "Isn't the arrow beyond you?" And then Jonathan cried out, "Hurry, make haste, do not delay." And so the boy picked up the arrow and returned to his master. But the boy did not know anything. Only Jonathan and David knew the arrangement. And then Jonathan gave his equipment to the boy and said, "Go, take it back to the city." And when the young men had gone, David got up from the south side of the stone, fell face down, and bowed 3 times. Then he and Jonathan kissed each other and wept together, though David wept more. And Jonathan said to David, "Go in peace, for the 2 of us have sworn in the name of the Lord, saying, May the Lord be a witness between you and me, and between your descendants and mine forever." And then David got up and departed, and Jonathan went back into the city. What kind of an oath do you think they took before the Lord that had them crying and being torn apart? What kind of oath do you think they had? What do you think? I made it clear what I know. Like, I can't say too much because of algorithms, but I made it clear what I think. Now, here's another thing. There were multiple partners, right? And so it doesn't have to just be the one. And I mean, he's obviously attracted to women too. And so we get into a different morality situation there when you start talking about multiple partners, right? And there is a spirit of carnality. And that is always the downfall of everything. That was the problem with Sodom and Gomorrah and the other cities along the way. And the problem was that they couldn't accept that there were people who couldn't do that didn't want to do that was not their accepted practices. And so they tried to force that situation upon them, and to the great detriment of people. And we see it repeatedly. That's leading the degenerate route. It is perfectly possible. I want to make it abundantly clear. It is perfectly possible to be in a same-sex relationship and be happy and healthy and everything possible. It is possible to be in an opposite-sex relationship. It is possible to be in a multi-partner relationship. It is highly unlikely. You, as a same-sex partner, are much more likely to find a same-sex partner who is aligned with you than it is to find 2 people who are open and honest enough to make polygamy work, much less 3. And that's what it really takes to make it work. You have to find 3 completely open, honest, and loving people who are that way with all 3 of you. That's so exponentially hard to do. It's so hard to find the one, much less the 2. And I don't begrudge anybody their 1 or their 2 if you happen to find it. The problem is that most of the time that situation will break down. There is jealousy that won't get resolved. Now, you might be the exception, and if you are, be blessed. I'm not mad at you. I don't care. It's not that. That's not the moral issue for me. The moral issue for me is the lack of respect for the sharing of souls. It is the degeneracy involved in the forcing of that for someone, right, in any situation. And that has been the problem throughout the book. A lot of people take the minutia of the law. We were given a lot of minutia, and that one in particular was hit a lot. There were valid reasons for that back in that time, and it's not to say that it was right, because it wasn't right, even if there were valid reasons. The valid reasons were the continuation of the human species. There were a lot less people. The valid reasons were property rights and keeping strife to a minimum. Here's the thing. The people existed regardless of whether or not they were able to say that. Chances are, somewhere in your family history, you had a aunt that never got married, but she lived with her friend. Or you had an uncle in the exact same situation. And they weren't accepted because this book hit them in the head so many times. The minutia of the law. Just beat them in the head with it. Just no. God made you perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. Now, I do not stand with people changing pieces of themselves physically in a permanent manner, right? I don't think that is ever the solution. It is perfectly okay to be an effeminate man or a masculine woman. Perfectly fine. There's no reason to change anything. Most of the problems that people are addressing when they do that stem from other things that they refuse to acknowledge even exist. And so it is a bigger problem. That's not to minimize the problem, but our solution to it is wrong. Like fundamentally the opposite of what should be done. Not that you just have to accept that you're a dude, so you gotta. No, that is never it. It is okay to be effeminate. It's perfectly fine. It's okay to be effeminate and straight. People won't accept you, but Pitt always will, because it is okay to be who you were meant to be. You shouldn't put on no mask. There's a lot of people running around with masks, and they claim this title, and that title becomes their life. That becomes their idol. They wave this rainbow like it's theirs, and it's not. I will operate under the covenant of the rainbow. I love each and every one of you for the way that you were made. Each and every single one of you. And that rainbow represents God's promise. And that promise is that he's not going to flood us. He's going to burn us with fire. And not because of sin, but just because that's the natural cycle of things. And we're supposed to bear that in mind as we go along. And a lot of that's gotten hidden by this book. And the people who use this book in the wrong way. One of my goals in doing this Bible study is to pick apart things like this. I could be completely wrong. I could be completely wrong in my interpretation. All I did was read it and make some assumptions. I am fine if you disagree with me. But it's not an illogical assumption to make. And if you bear in mind that the people who were founding the religion when they wrote these books, and that is what has happened in every single book inside this book. It was people founding a religion, writing a book, or a letter, or whatever it happens to be. If you bear in mind that the victor writes the histories, and that you can shape the narrative if you are the one in charge of writing the histories, then you can shape whatever you want into the minutiae. The overarching story of this book is the same in every single chapter. Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. And there is no love in telling somebody they can't get married. There is no love in telling somebody they can't make mistakes. Even if they don't think it's a mistake and you do, you don't get to interfere in that. There's no love. You can tell them, I think that might be a mistake, and that is the extent of what you get to do. And so, I think I have hammered this nail in particular enough. So let's move on to the next problematic section. And then David came to Nob, to Ahimelech, the priest. And when Ahimelech met David, he trembled and asked him, why are you alone? Why is no one with you? The king has given me a mission, David replied. He told me that no one is to know about the mission or charge. And I have directed my young men to meet me at a certain place. Now then, what do you have on hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread, or whatever can be found. Lies and deception is the way that God always saves his people. Always. And there is no common bread on hand, the priest replied, but there is some consecrated bread, provided that the young men have kept themselves from women. And David answered, women have indeed been kept from us, as is usual when I set out. And the equipment of the young men is holy, and as it is even on common missions, and all the more at this time. And so the priest gave him the consecrated bread, since there was no bread there, but the bread of the presence, which had been removed from before the Lord and replaced with hot bread on the day it was taken away. Now, one of Saul's servants was there that day, detained before the Lord, and his name was Dougie, the Edomite, the chief shepherd for Saul. Well, that's a problematic right there, right? Taking away from the fact that the showbread, right? The bread that he's given away, the bread of the presence. That's like walking into the Catholic Church and taking the wafers, right? Same concept. So this is not just like any old bread. It's very specific things. And yeah, no women, okay. But taken away from that, one of Saul's servants was there that day, Doeg the Edomite, the chief shepherd for Saul. So chief shepherd is different than just a shepherd, right? That's the dude. So this the dude that they put in charge of all the sheeps for the whole kingdom of Israel, right? At least the royal stuff, right? Saul's stuff. And so he's an Edomite. Well, the Edomites are not friendly, right? There's not direct battle at this point, I don't think, because he's dealing with the Philistines, but they're not like buddies. And it's just interesting that Dougie the Edomite was the chief shepherd for Saul, and he's the one that, like, yeah, I don't know if it's specifically said that he's the one that runs back and tattles to Saul, but that is what happens. And then David asked Ahimelech, "Is there not a spear or sword on hand here? For I have brought neither my sword nor my weapons with me, because the king's business was urgent." And, when you're on the king's business, you're not going to bring your sword with you. Like, that's not the least bit suspicious at all. And the priest replied, "The sword of Goliath, the Philistine, whom you killed in the valley of Elah, is here. It is wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If you want it, you may take it, for there is no other but this one." And David said, "There is none like it. Give it to me." And that day David fled from Saul and went to Achish, king of Gath. But the servants of Achish said to him, "Is this not David, the king of the land? Did they not sing about him in their dances, saying, 'Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands'?" King of the land, eh? Interesting. And now David took these words to heart and was very much afraid of Achish, the king of Gath. So he changed his behavior before them and feigned madness in their hands. And he scratched on the doors of the gate and let his saliva run down his beard. And then Achish said to his servants, "Look, you can see that man is insane. Why have you brought him to me? Am I in need of a madman that you have brought this man to rave in my presence? Must this man come into my house?" He was captured. That's what happened here. He was brought in, captured to be before the king, and he, through subterfuge, managed to escape. And I'm not blaming him. You do your thing, boss. If you're trying to escape, like, first off, let's look at what he just did. He went to the holy place, to one of the holy places scattered around, and retrieved the sword of the giant that he killed when he was a child. And then he takes that sword to the city of the giant that he killed, because Goliath was from Gath. And so he was trying to earn some redemption, because he's very much hunted in Israel. And he didn't get the reception he expected. They take the sword and they drag him in, and he's so he starts acting like he's got a mental affliction. And then the king comes out and is like, "This man is insane. I don't need madmen. Get rid of him." And so David left Gath and took refuge in the cave of Adullam. And when his brothers and the rest of his father's household heard about it, they went down to him there. And all who were distressed or indebted or discontented rallied around him, and he became their leader. About 400 men were with him. And from there David went to Mizpah of Moab, where he said to the king of Moab, "Please, let my father and mother stay with you until I learn what God will do for me." So he left them in the care of the king of Moab, and they stayed with him the whole time David was in the stronghold. And then the prophet Gad said to David, "Do not stay in the stronghold, depart, and go into the land of Judah." So David left and went to the forest of Hereth. And soon Saul learned that David and his men had been discovered. At that time Saul was in Gibeah, sitting under the tamarisk tree on the hill at Gibeah, with his spear in his hand, and all his servants standing around him. And then Saul said to his servants, "Listen, men of Benjamin, is the son of Jesse giving you all of you fields and vineyards, and making you commanders of thousands and hundreds? Is that why all of you conspired against me? Not one of you told me that my own son had made a covenant with the son of Jesse. Not one of you has shown concern for me, or revealed to me that my son has stirred up my own servant to lie in wait against me, as in the case today." But Doegi the Edomite, who had stationed himself with Saul's servants, answered, "I saw the son of Jesse come to Ahimelech, son of Ahitub, at Nob, and Ahimelech inquired of the Lord. Ahimelech inquired of the Lord for him, and gave him provisions. And he also gave him the sword of Goliath the Philistine. And then the king sent messengers to summon Ahimelech the priest, the son of Ahitub, and his father's whole family who were priests at Nob, and all of them came to the king. "Listen now, son of Ahitub," said Saul. "Here I am, my lord," he replied. And Saul asked him, "Why have you and the son of Jesse conspired against me? You gave him bread and a sword, and inquired of God for him, so that he could rise up against me to lie in wait, as he is doing today." And Ahimelech answered the king, "Who among all your servants is as faithful as David, the king's son-in-law, the captain of your bodyguard, who is honored in your house? Was that day the first time I inquired of God for him? Far be it from me. Let not the king accuse your servant, or any of my father's household, for your servant knew nothing of this whole affair, not in part or in whole." But the king replied, "You will surely die, Ahimelech, you and all your father's house." And then the king ordered the guards at his side, "Turn and kill the priests of the Lord, because they too sided with David. For they knew he was fleeing, but they did not tell me." But the king's servants would not lift a hand to strike the priests of the Lord. So the king ordered Doegi, "You turn and strike down the priests." And Doegi the Edomite turned and struck down the priest himself. And on that day he killed 85 men who wore the linen ephod. He also put to the sword Nob, the city of the priests, with its men and women, children and infants, oxen, donkey, and sheep. But one of the sons of Ahimelech, son of Ahitub, escaped. His name was Abiathar, and he fled to David. And Abiathar told David, that Saul had killed the priest of the Lord. And then David said to Abiathar, "I knew that Doegi the Edomite was there that day, and that he was sure to tell Saul. I myself am responsible for the lives of everyone in your father's house. Stay with me, do not be afraid, for he who seeks your life is seeking mine as well, and you will be safe with me." Now, here we have some, aftermarket effects. Why would Saul do this? That is unreasonable, right? Unless there was a reason to suspect. It is unreasonable to expect the priest to deny the prayers that you have ordered him to give prior. But kings don't have to make sense, and so it's whatever. He can do whatever. But the men of Israel wouldn't do this. Who does he turn to? He turns to the Moabite. The Moabite. Interesting. And the Moabite, Doegi the Edomite, my bad. I thought it said no. No. David's parents went to Moab. Okay. And so the Edomite, that's south of the Negev. I'm not pulling up the geography today, but that's south of and to the east of the Negev, leading into Midian. And there is contention between these peoples, right? That's what I was pointing out earlier. And now, this guy kills 85 men who wore the linen ephod. So this guy, on the orders of this king, kills 85 servants of God. Well, surely they die today. Not to mention, like, he also put to the sword the whole city of priests. Now, we haven't seen a whole lot of the Levites, right? They're not really referenced as Levites anymore. We got the city of the priests here, but that's because when Samuel came in, he was kind of the end of the Levites. There may have been pockets, right? Nob was probably one of those pockets, but they didn't hold the sway that they did prior to Samuel. But it is interesting to note that it's the Edomites who do this. And now it was reported to David, look, the Philistines are fighting against Keilah and looting the threshing floors. So David inquired of the Lord, should I go and attack these Philistines? And the Lord said to David, go and attack the Philistines and save Keilah. But David's men said to him, look, we are afraid here in Judah. How much more if we go to Keilah against the armies of the Philistines? And once again, David inquired of the Lord, and the Lord answered him, go at once to Keilah, for I will deliver the Philistines into your hand. And then David and his men went to Keilah and fought against the Philistines and carried off their livestock, striking them with a mighty blow. And so David saved the people of Keilah. Now, Abiathar, son of Ahimelech, had brought the ephod with him when he fled to David at Keilah. And when Saul was told that David had gone to Keilah, he said, God has delivered him into my hand, for he has trapped himself by entering a town with gates and bars. And then Saul summoned all his troops to go to war at Keilah and besiege David and his men. And when David learned that Saul was plotting evil against him, he said to Abiathar the priest, bring the ephod. And David said, O God, O Lord, God of Israel, your servant has heard that Saul intends to come to Keilah and destroy the city on my account. Will the citizens of Keilah surrender me into his hand? Will Saul come down as your servant has heard? O Lord, please, O Lord God of Israel, please tell your servant. He will, said the Lord. And so David asked, will the citizens of Keilah surrender me and my men into the hand of Saul? They will, said the Lord. And then David and his men, about 600 strong, set out and departed from Keilah, moving from place to place. And when Saul was told that David had escaped from Keilah, he declined to go forth. And David stayed in the wilderness strongholds, in the hill country, in the wilderness of Ziph. Day after day Saul searched for him, but God would not deliver David into his hand. And while David was in Horesh, in the wilderness of Ziph, he saw that Saul had come out to take his life. And Saul's son Jonathan came to David in Horesh and strengthened his hand in God, saying, do not be afraid, for my father Saul will never lay a hand on you, and you will be king over Israel, and I will be your second in command. Even my father Saul knows this is true. Again, we have not been told that David is the anointed one. He is merely a servant at this point. And so the two of them made a covenant before the Lord, and David remained in Horesh while Jonathan went home. So they made a covenant again, huh? And then the Ziphites came up to Saul at Gibeah and said, is not David hiding among us in the strongholds at Horesh, on the hill of Hachilah, south of Jeshimon? Now, O king, come down, whatever your soul desires, and we will be responsible for delivering him into your hand. May you be blessed by the Lord, replied Saul, for you have had compassion on me. Please, go and prepare further, investigate, and watch carefully where he goes and who has seen him there, for I am told that he is extremely cunning. Observe and find out the places where he hides, and then come back to me with certainty, and I will go with you. If he is in the land, I will search him out among all the clans of Judah. He's told he's a cunning man, eh? Does he not have first-hand knowledge? Does he not know if he's a cunning man? Does he have to be told that he's a cunning man? Does he need outsiders to let him know that the guy who sits at his table, who is now a grown man and has been his armor bearer since he was a child, does he need that? Okay. Maybe he missed it. Maybe he's just that unobservant. Then they set out and went to Ziph ahead of Saul, and now David and his men were in the wilderness of Maon in the Arabah south of Jeshimon. And Saul and his men went to seek him, and when David was told about it, he went down to the rock and stayed in the wilderness of Maon. And when Saul heard of this, he pursued David there. And Saul was proceeding along one side of the mountain, and David and his men along the other side. Even though David was hurrying to get away, Saul and his men were closing in on David and his men to capture them. And then a messenger came to Saul, saying, "Come quickly, for the Philistines have raided the land." And so Saul broke off his pursuit of David and went to meet the Philistines. And that is why that place is called Selah Hamahelikoth. And David went up from there and lived in the strongholds of En-gedi. That means rock of escape. The word I couldn't pronounce means rock of escape. Okay, we'll try to get through let's see where we're at on time real quick. Okay, we can probably get through this. I'm going to burn through that. David spares Saul. And after Saul had returned from pursuing the Philistines, he was told, "David is in the wilderness of En-gedi." So Saul took 3,000 chosen men from all Israel and went to look for David and his men in the region of the rocks of the wild goats. And soon Saul came to the sheepfolds along the road, where there was a cave, and he went in to relieve himself. And David and his men were hiding in the recesses of the cave. So David's men said to him, "This is the day about which the Lord said to you, 'Behold, I will deliver your enemy into your hand, that you may do with him as you wish.'" And then David crept up and secretly cut off a corner of Saul's robe. And afterwards David's conscience was stricken because he had cut off the corner of Saul's robe. So he said to his men, "The Lord forbid that I should do such a thing to my master, the Lord's anointed. May I never lift my hand against him, since he is the Lord's anointed." No, he's not. You are. If nobody else in the entire land knows that, you and Samuel will know that. You are the Lord's anointed. Right? Ain't that what we read? That's what I read. And with these words, David restrained his men, and he did not let them rise up against Saul. And then Saul left the cave and went on his way. And after that, David got up and went out of the cave and called out to Saul, "My Lord is the king." And when Saul looked behind him, David bowed face down in reverence and said to Saul, "Why do you listen to the words who say, 'Look, David intends to harm you'? Behold, this day you have seen with your own eyes that the Lord delivered you into my hand in that cave. I was told to kill you, but I spared you and said, 'I will not lift my hand against my Lord, since he is the Lord's anointed.' See, my father, look at the corner of your robe in my hand, for I cut it off, but I did not kill you. See and know that there is no evil or rebellion in my hands. I have not sinned against you, even though you are hunting me down to take my life. And may the Lord judge between you and me, and may the Lord take vengeance on you. But my hand will never be against you. As the old proverb says, wickedness proceeds from the wicked, but my hand will never be against you. Against whom has the king of Israel come out? Whom are you pursuing? A dead dog? A flea? May the Lord be our judge and decide between you and me. May he take notice and plead my case and deliver me from your hand." And when David finished saying these things, Saul called back, "Is that your voice, David, my son?" And then Saul wept aloud and said to David, "You are more righteous than I, for you have rewarded me with good, though I have rewarded you with evil. And you have not shown this day how well you have dealt with me. And when the Lord delivered me into your hands, you did not kill me. When a man finds his enemy, does he go away unharmed? May the Lord reward you with good for what you have done for me this day. Now, I know for sure that you will be king, and that the kingdom of Israel will be established in your hands. So now swear to me by the Lord that you will not cut off my descendants or wipe out my name from my father's house." And so David gave his oath to Saul. And then Saul returned home, but David and his men went up into the stronghold. All right, we will save Samuel 25 for the next round. The death of Saul is very short. I hope I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a very difficult topic. I know that I hold some very unconventional beliefs and that what I say here steps on some toes. It is not intentional, but I do not apologize for it. I am merely reading the book as it is presented. I am merely talking about the things that I see logically consistent or inconsistent in this book. And there are a lot of them. There are great things that come out of this, and there are terrible things that have come from this. And we, as children of God, need to be discerning about what we believe. We, as children of God, need to be discerning about the practices that we enact in our life. The greater call of God has been this throughout history. Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. That is the sum of the law. The only thing ever required for forgiveness from your sin was for you to sacrifice your sin. Not an animal, not a human. And therefore, I have problems with these religions. God loves you regardless. God created all things. He created all people. He created all animals. He created all the elements. Everything is God. He is above the book. He is in charge of the book. And he has allowed things in this book that aren't necessarily true to be a dominating force. I feel like he is calling that to an end. There are other people doing the same thing I'm doing. I am merely exposing some things that should have been brought to light. Like if you were to sit down and actually read the book, like these things jump at you. Like if you look at it without the lens of redemption, right? Because the only thing needed for your redemption was your repentance. And so if you look at it without the lens of all of these deaths were a necessary thing, it's a lot different. That's all I'm doing. Like God said, repent, turn to me, return your face to me, and I will have mercy on you. How many times? We haven't even begun to get to those yet. There's still no hell yet. Do y'all know that? Where we're at right here with David, there is no hell. They don't have a concept for hell. There's Sheol. It's a place where the souls go. It's no differentiation. Like, there's no difference between good and bad. You just die and you go. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me. And I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pit Steak. Peace.